There are so many surprises of legislating, like conference committees. I've seen competing bills go in and something totally different emerge. And to the casual observer, it may be a mystery how that happened, but not to you, at least not after today. Because on this episode of Better Advocacy in 10 minutes or less, we're opening the door to these closed door meetings and revealing to you what a conference committee is and how you can influence their work. Okay, for starters, not every bill goes to conference. So, when is it used? This happens when the two chambers, the House and Senate usually, pass different variations of the same bill. This could be because you introduced your bill in both chambers or because your bill was amended in the second chamber it went to, so it no longer matches what it looked like when it left the first chamber. And you can see this would be a problem, right? If there are two different versions of a bill that each pass, then how can the governor decide which is the official version? Obviously, the House and Senate have to agree on the bill text before they're able to send it to the governor. The conference committee is how they do this. It's their job, the conference committee members' job, to reconcile the two versions of the bill so that both chambers can then approve the new bill and send it to the governor for their signature. All right, so we know what a conference committee does, but who gets to be part of the conference committee? Now, this can vary from state to state, so check the practice in your home state. But usually, what will happen is the speaker or majority leader will appoint several members from their chamber, and this will include the bill's patron, both of you had separate House and Senate bills, among others, and have a majority representation by the party in power. Besides the patrons, you may have other electeds that have worked on this issue included on that conference committee as well. Usually it will be a very small group of legislators, and yes, only legislators, 6 or less, I would say, that will be part of it. Now that we know who's part of this conference committee, what do? Their job is to create a bill text that is acceptable to both chambers. Now, when I say acceptable, it doesn't have to be by unanimous consent on each chamber. You just need that majority vote as you normally would for a piece of legislation. Now, at this point in session, there isn't a lot of time. No new public hearings are held. All the testimony and debate happened as it was going through the committees the first time, right? If they want the bill to get out of conference committee, they need to act quickly and negotiate a way forward. This means getting a majority of the members of that conference committee to agree to something. If you have a split legislature and therefore an equal number of members from each party, this can be hard, which is why some people try to avoid conference committee at all costs. In my experience, it usually comes down to the patron and one other elected working out a solution in private. Maybe there's an intense closed door office visit. Maybe they have a brief chat in the elevator. On more complex issues, aides are tasked with going back to the advocates, lobbyists, or impacted groups and agencies to see what their positions are and how any changes might affect that. Now, this sounds like it could take a lot of time, and under normal circumstances, it should. However, these aren't normal circumstances. They need to decide on a path forward, and they need to do it now. Really, now. Usually, you only have a couple days to get an agreement. But what can these agreements look like? What are the possible outcomes? Now, the easiest ones are when a technical issue didn't come to light until the bill had already passed one chamber, so the bill was amended to address that problem in the second chamber. In those cases, the conference committee simply adopts the latest version of the bill, and everyone is happy. Other times, both chambers, or at least a majority in both chambers, agree on the underlying policy goals, but have different ideas about how to get there. This can be caused when you have influential members who have certain policy and political idiosyncrasies. Let's say one elected likes to defer to local governments while the other likes the state to take the lead. They both have the same goal, but they bring differing approaches to implementation. In cases like this, you might not care much about the how. You just want your policy implemented, so you'll be happy with whichever side comes out on top. Now, sometimes bills do go completely sideways, and when it gets out of the second chamber, it no longer looks like what you wanted. Now you have two bill texts that are diametrically opposed. You know that the folks representing the second chamber are not going to budge. They made their changes for a reason. In cases like this, where one side refuses to budge so you can't change a bad bill, you just want it to die in conference committee. We actually did a whole video about that. Dying in conference committee means either the two sides couldn't come to an agreement or one side refused to work with the other. And sometimes when you want that bill to die, because if the only way it gets out of committee is with changes you don't want, then let it die and come back next year. It's better to regroup and fight next year than to get something on the books for the sake of getting a win when it's really a loss. Okay, now that you know what happens and what the outcomes could be, we can get to the most consequential part of this video for you. How can you influence a conference committee? The first thing to remember is that these committees don't have much time to do their work. I think I mentioned that maybe 5 or 6 times already. A few days at the most. That means you need to already have your game plan ready before the committee is created. You need to know your ask and make sure your patron is on board. And the original bill patron, the elected you've been working with, is the best one to communicate with. This person will usually have the most influence over the negotiations. Now, since there are no public hearings for these committees, that means you need to get your message to each of the members directly. Whip up a new one-pager that has your desired language, why you support it, and what other orgs are supporting this with you. Also, include why other ideas are bad. Ideally, be able to share this directly with other members besides your patron. Really push for these in-person meetings. That's how you can have that conversation with the legislators and they can see why this is so important. But look, if that's not possible, get it to their aide and make sure those aides understand exactly what you're asking. Finally, remember these negotiations are usually very informal. I've been on elevators where two members of the same committee come to an agreement faster than we can travel 3 floors. What this means for you is you can't expect the formality that you see during the rest of the legislative session. Be ready to react quickly to proposals and counter proposals. Don't be surprised if your patron or an aide just grabs you in the hall and asks you if something will work. You won't have time to take things back for a full coalition endorsement if you're working with a coalition. So you need to know what would make your team want to kill the bill and what they find acceptable so you can relay this to legislators quickly and depending on what they're asking. And if all goes well, meaning a bill you're happy with made it out of conference committee, you should have smooth sailing. I've seen very few bills die after escaping conference. So celebrate, maybe only with yourself until the final votes in the Gov signs it. You successfully guided your bill through a conference committee. And are you looking for more ways to improve your advocacy? Check out the rest of the videos in the Better Advocacy in 10 Minutes or Less series.